Hello, everybody out there in comic book land. And if you're watching this, you can only be here for one reason a brand new episode of Major Previews, this time for the month of February 2025. We are opening our third eye, looking into the solicitations to find the best and brightest new comics to hit the shelves. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don, and I'm joined each and every episode of Major Previews by.
It's me, Alex Garcia, aka the Cog, the comic OG. I always look forward to doing this with you, Don. I can't wait.
Definitely. We've been doing the preview series for a full calendar year. I think we've all grown as we've been doing this series. We found a way to make these episodes a little bit more snappier. We've gotten our picks down to three each. And yeah, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll go ahead and pick out, we'll go pick for pick of the three picks that we're picking out for February. These are the issues you people should be paying attention to that are going to be hitting comic stands. These are the issues people will be talking about. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Two-Face number 3. It gets released by DC Comics on February 5th of 2025. This is the series that purports to be Perry Mason meets DC Comics. We have one of the greatest lawyers of all time, former DA himself, Harvey Dent, out there on the front lines doing his best to try to make sure that people are not abusing the law of all people, right? The very duplicitous Harvey Dent. But in particular, the reason why I picked number 3 is because it's set to be the comic book debut of Baby Doll, the animated series, the Batman the animated
Oh,
series character, the
oh.
sort of Gary Coleman
Mhm.
esque
Yeah.
analog of this adult woman trapped in a young girl's body, and
Yeah.
how she
Mhm.
uses that appearance to sort of get up to basically no good. So it's a combination of following Two Face. I think that the character has always been really interesting, more so as a study. All the like two branded thing, two guns, robbing the Second National Bank. I mean, I'm not a fan of all that stuff, but you bring it down to here and his very black and white view of the law. You sprinkle in a little bit of Batman the Animated Series with having Baby Doll in it. I think people should be checking out this Two Face number 3 run. I just wanted to make sure I had the creative team right on this, but you would think this character's been around forever. He hasn't had many solo series. This
Nope.
has been done by Christian Ward with art by Fabio Veris. And yeah, out on the 5th of February. So check it out.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the creative team behind this is, from my perspective, relatively unknown, but it has been making some waves. The first two issues I've heard mostly interesting things about. It's the idea that the Two Face identity is not in control right now. It's Harvey
Right.
that's in control, and he's putting villains on trial,
Yeah.
which reminds me a lot of another Batman the Animated Series episode where he develops a third personality. Do you remember that episode
Yeah, I do.
with the judge?
Yeah.
You
And
know, so it's
also, I want to say the DID stuff is from the animated series as well. This whole big bad Harv split personality thing, because he was kind
I
of just disfigured and kind of crazy. There
yes,
was no like sort of like snapping and I'm one side and I'm the other. That's something that they kind of played with, that he had already in him, the DID, before the Maroni attack, and how
right,
that, goes on moving forward. But yeah, it's all the best parts of my favorite version of Batman the animated series.
yeah,
And then following a villain, it's always super fun. But yeah,
yeah.
you're saying.
No, just and also I had no idea this was going to be I seen the cover for this one,
Yeah.
and I just assumed Baby Doll has always been in the comics. So this is yet again another character coming over from the animated series and debuting, and I really hope it blows her up because that was a tragic episode.
Oh, it's one of my top five just because how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a punch 'em up fight. It's
No,
not it's not a
nope.
have to stop the bomb before it blows up kind of thing. It's a very personal story
Yeah,
of a
yeah,
very traumatized person. And ultimately what ends up happening is Batman is the most traumatized, so he'll always be there for a hug. And so what
yeah, and
happens?
and, and that he picks her up and like walks off.
Yeah,
And it's just like, well, where does he take her?
yeah.
Whatever happened to that? I don't recall her ever showing up again.
has that one episode. I wouldn't be surprised if she was shown in other like Rogues Gallery-esque scenes of her being like at a bar
Right.
or stuff like that. But nothing.
Baby drinking in the corner.
Yeah, right. Out of a bottle,
Another one.
out of a yeah, rubber nipples, all that.
Yeah.
Hey, you
No, so
can't
that
talk
that's
about
that.
Batman without rubber nipples. So
I always like these kind of miniseries because it gives these unknown creatives the opportunity to flex their muscles and do something different with the character. Do
yeah.
something different with the character, introduce a character from some place that has never been seen. And how many writers have we heard of start this way?
Oh,
Where
100%. And these are, in my opinion, low risk bets.
Mhm.
Right? If the True Face series doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Okay. But if it works and it hammers it home, next thing you know, people are collecting these, and we got, the next season of the Penguin is Two Face instead,
There you
and it
go.
becomes a
There you
series like
go.
that. So yeah,
I'm
pick it
down with
up,
that.
guys.
I'm with it. Jumping over to me, you went kind of underground with that pick. Me, I kind of went with the easy pick because guys, this is a series that I'm really hoping everybody is excited for and is picking up. I'm going with One World Under Doom. Mm.
Yeah.
Guys, Doctor Doom, spoilers. I mean, we've already discussed this on the channel so many times, but Doctor Doom is now the Sorcerer Supreme.
He is.
He gets this power. He tricks Doctor Strange into giving him the title of the Sorcerer Supreme, and then, much like the Maker over in the Ultimate Universe, he hides away. He disappears for 6 months. And what happens after 6 months is he's coming out and doing what I've always wanted Doom to do, and is take over the planet.
Yeah.
Because to me, the guy probably knows what he's doing. We kind of got an inkling of this in Secret Wars when Jonathan Hickman did it, but that was a different circumstance. That was him taking parts of the universe and putting it together and creating this pocket dimension that even I think even Doom knew, all right, this isn't gonna last. You
Right.
know what I mean? I think this is really him finally saying, look, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this in this world. This is my world, and I'm taking it over. And this series is being written by the current Fantastic Four writer, Ryan North, who's
Right.
been knocking it out the park. And I think we talked about this on the last previews, where Ryan North has kind of been low key on the Fantastic Four book, doing these one and done stories, these short little two parters, and no one was really paying the series any mind until now. I mean, you're giving that same guy who's not been doing this high caliber, high octane Fantastic Four series, and now you're giving him this event. And this is a guy who I have grown to like. He's written a couple other things I've checked out. He's written on, I believe, one of the runs on Squirrel Girl. He's done a lot of independent stuff. I trust this guy. I trust
Yeah.
this guy. And being tag teamed with RB Silva, who, if you remember, did a lot of the art on a lot of the Krakoan Age X-Men books.
Right.
This event is looking like it's going to be game changing. Marvel is really, really good at doing these events where big things happen and it just sends ripples out throughout the Marvel universe and changes it, even if for just a couple years. I'm excited for this series. I'm excited to finally see Doctor Doom just taking the reins and taking it over. And I mean that brilliant cover where literally everybody's kneeling before the might of Doom.
Yeah.
It's exciting, and if this goes right, this is a 9-part series. I believe it's a 9-part series. It goes right into the Fantastic Four movie.
Yep.
So this is a great place for people to just jump on and learn about Doctor Doom.
I would have put this on my list, but you have been talking about this book for months. I knew it was gonna be on your list. You've been following all things Doctor Doom for quite some time. And I'm just gonna piggyback. I agree with everything that you said. The only thing I would add is for those who are on the fence, Doctor Doom is the quintessential Marvel villain. You may have not known that because of his stock being pushed down because of Fox owning them. But it's been quite some time where we have gotten a definitive Doctor Doom story. The last one would be about 10 years ago with Secret Wars. And that's only a homage to the fact that he had such a big part in the original Secret Wars,
Right.
right? And
Yep.
so the last 10 years has been kind of spent rehabbing that family, rehabbing that character. And yeah, we finally have the dust has finally settled enough that we can let Doom be Doom. And not only let Doom be Doom in the corner of the Fantastic Four where no one else is paying attention. No,
Hmm.
we're unleashing him on the whole Marvel universe so that those who are not aware of what this man is capable of, now it's a universe-wide event. The irony is that, I'm very familiar with what happened when the Fantastic Four tried to liberate Latveria from Doctor Doom, and they're all like, "What are you doing? He's
Yeah.
great, like
Hmm.
he's fantastic, the trains run on time, kind of stuff."
Yeah.
And so like what happens in this as well, Doom can be malicious, but he could also be benevolent, as we've seen with
Hmm.
Latveria. So
Yep.
I can totally see some people being. I mean, this might be a little bit on the nose, but I can totally see people being like, "Well, he's not an establishment leader, but if he can get the job done, if he can clear the swamp, kind of stuff, maybe the world will be better off for it." So it'll be very interesting to see how Doom is as leader, because I do think that it'll be very interesting and to see what is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back as far as when people are going to choose to want to stop him.
Yeah, no, I mean, and not because to see what the heroes do, because the funny thing is in this series is the governments are backing this. Like they just see it and they just run with it. Like, oh, Doctor Doom. Everybody was already scared of Doctor Doom, but him
Right.
showing up with the Eye of Agamotto and the cape and probably some crazy ass spell announcing that he has come out from Latveria to announce that, hey, I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
The world governments are just like, yeah, yeah, that's right, we good.
A mastery of tech and science has got to be absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Just what do you say to that? Just like, okay, okay. I mean, because this reminds me a lot of like the Krakoan era, right? The X
Hmm.
Men announced they came out. They said, look, we have all these wonder drugs. We can teleport ourselves around the world. We seemingly can't die anymore, because in the beginning no one knew about the resurrection protocols. So everyone just was like, okay, thumbs up.
Yeah.
Orcus is doing what they're doing, but everybody else pretty much fell suit. So I think this is what's happening with Doctor Doom. Everyone's just like, look, man, just roll with this.
Yeah, you don't
We
know how
listen.
people's pockets are being lined in situations like this, right? And what causes these allegiances to happen. This is a comic book kind of trope, right? We've had Mayor Fisk before. We've had
Mhm.
President Luther. It's all to see how these villains would act. They always say they want to rule. What happens when they get put in that position? So
And there you
I
go.
super,
Here we
I
go.
super
So
dig
what?
it.
So what's your number two pick?
Well, we were talking about Doom, and we were talking about just his legacy, and so I mean, a little bit akin to that is my second pick, Star Wars Legacy of Vader, number one. It's coming out February 5th from Charles Soule and Luke Ross. The actual solicitation says Darth Vader's shadow extends into the rise of the First Order. The reign of Supreme Leader Kylo Ren begins. Kylo's dark obsession leads him to Mustafar. What secrets does Fortress Vader hold for the young tyrant, and what face from the past will guide him on his quest? The the Charles Soule run of Vader did so much to flesh out what I think people actually wanted from the prequels. I think there was an entire chunk of this man's history and how you turn and how you stay angry and how you stay fueling that rage and how you continue to slaughter with no trouble sleeping at night, and what does that mean each and every time. I loved reading the original run that Charles Soule did of Vader, because it shows that there were multiple times where he thought about going back to the light, and multiple times that he was questioning whether or not he was doing the right thing, ultimately to then choose to be the tyrant that he is. One of the most underwritten characters in Star Wars history has to be Kylo Ren. like completely, absolutely underwritten. And you believe it was done on purpose so that they could flesh it out in other either movies or spin-offs or nothing. But because of the reaction that entire trilogy got, I feel like they put the all of the progress of that on ice. Remember when Who Was Snoke was like a big mystery? It was like, oh, who's Snoke?
Yep.
We're really trying to figure out. Oh no, he's just a clone. Shut up. He's just a clone. He's one of many. He's just a clone in the
Which
tube.
they never directly say. They just chop him in half, and they're like, yeah, he's the clone kind of thing.
They
You're
made the
gonna
Knights
see.
of Ren look so cool, and then they just show up at the end and they get their asses whooped. So it's
That's it.
like I believe, I want to believe, maybe maybe that's just what it is. I just want to believe that Soul here is writing down and extending the lore of Kylo just like how he did for Vader. And I want to live in a world where I believe in Kylo's methods, and he's not just a petulant child smashing his helmet against the wall kind of stuff. I hate you, Dad,
Yeah.
or Grandpa, whatever the heck. Um, I want to believe that this is the beginning of actually getting what we wanted out of that character, finding out what his actual pathos was. I thought it was an incredibly interesting idea that you would have somebody trying to live up to the legend, the legacy of Darth Vader, and constantly falling short. And what does that mean? And if you're fleshing that out in a comic like this, a special like this is a must have for people who were on the fence with that sequel trilogy, but also for Star Wars fans in general as they continue to kill it in the comic space. Something like this is just gonna add sprinkles to already a delicious sundae that is what they did with that sequel trilogy.
No, absolutely correct. And this was going to be one of my picks, but it's just like how you said with One World on the Doom. I couldn't. For me, I didn't see you picking this because you don't
Yeah,
talk that much about Star Wars. But I was really
right.
happy you did because this book does deserve this attention. Charles Soule or Soul, however we pronounce it, he killed it on that Darth Vader series. I mean, watching him, one of the best parts of that series in the beginning when he learns how to make his red lightsaber,
Yeah,
that was amazing the way they showed that. And then when he goes through his whole complete dark transformation, because a lot of people, like you said, in the prequel trilogy, a lot of people just say, okay, he got his arms and legs chopped off, got thrown in a suit, and now he's Darth Vader. Nuh-uh. That was just the beginning of his transformation. And
yeah,
by the end of that run by Charles here, where he like I from what I remember, he like sees the ghost of Padme, right? At the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
And he basically looks at it and goes, yeah, fuck it. I'm bad.
Yeah,
like
he has a
I'm
very heartbreaking I think it's a vision of
mhm.
what could have happened if he chose to defy the Emperor and go back to Obi-Wan and apologize, even disfigured, even as Vader.
Yeah.
And he basically says no to it. Like he
Nah,
gets
right.
presented this
Yeah.
kind of future,
Yeah.
and it is in his grasp, it is in his reach, and he chooses not to. Those moments are incredibly lost to the lore that is Star Wars if you're not reading those comics. People
Yeah.
got a little bit of that taste in the Obi-Wan series with more younger, but yeah, just a slightly little bit. But you need to see that build up. And I think that those who feel like Kylo is missing something, I can't help but
Yeah.
believe that he's gonna have something for him too.
Yeah. I can totally see Soul just knocking this out the park. And hopefully it leads to him doing maybe like a Kylo run. I would
Yeah.
love to see that. I would love to see that because, like you said, the sequel trilogy, you don't you don't get enough of Kylo. You don't see what it is. You see he's like you said, this petulant child. He has these emotional outbreaks. Understandably, he seemed like, hey, I was almost murdered in my sleep. It seems, but then you go through this other transformation that happened very quickly.
They're
We need
purposely
this
vague
flesh
about
out.
all that, right? They're purposely vague
Yeah,
about the First Order. They're perfectly I like how where the fuck that came from. They're perfectly vague about Snoke, and then this whole thing with Kylo and the Knights of Ren. So let's get some
yeah,
actual story told. If this is a blank spot on the map, if this is a blank spot in the timeline, I have no doubt that they're gonna kill it on with this comic and
yeah.
fleshing some of that
No,
stuff out.
I'll be picking this one up for sure.
Great minds, bro. Great minds.
Yeah, but hey, let's keep this villain train going because for my next pick, I got Mystique number 5 doing double duty. Declan Shelby on the art and the writing. I mean, he's right behind
Final
me too.
issue, right? Final issue of the
Final
series.
issue. This is the final issue of the series. Declan Shelby, guys, has been one of those creators who he's still considered up and coming, but to me, this is a guy who's made it. Considering what he's done in the Thundercats universe, what he's done just on this miniseries, I mean, Mystique was one of the stars of the Krakoan era.
Yeah.
But coming out of the Krakoan era, it was like, where's Mystique? You know, all these X titles get announced, all these things get announced, and you're like, well, where's Mystique? Mystique played a huge part in the Krakoan era, basically burning it down, helping to burn it down.
Yeah.
Where is she now? I love seeing Mystique go back to her covert spy roots. You know, the kind of like the villainous side of, well, kind of like Black Widow before she
Yeah. Yeah.
became a hero. You know, And what's great is something that has, I don't know about you, but growing up, we always have these arguments about Mystique, about whether or not she can actually not just look like the character, but have their powers.
Right.
And I would always say no. You know, if it's like a weapon like Wolverine's claws or Angel's wings, yes, she can copy that and
Because that's
manipulate,
part
and
of their appearance.
that's part of their appearance, and so she can use that. But she turns into Cyclops. She doesn't get optic blasts. She turns into Magneto. She doesn't get magnetic powers. What happens in this series is a certain a certain acolyte by the name of Fabian Cortez juices her up, and in
Ah,
juicing her up, he amplifies her shapeshifting abilities to where she gets that person's power as well. Not to the same degree,
right.
but it just adds so much more elements to her abilities and makes her that much more dangerous. Because Mystique is a character that is no bullshit. Like she
Yeah.
is wonderful in that manner. I loved back about, it's probably been like 20 years now, when Brian K. Vaughan had a great not mini series or maxi series, like 12 issues on a Mystique series. And in that series, all he had her doing was these crazy spy stories where she's just infiltrating, low level thugs, or even going after, villains, weapons and stuff like that, and showing just how crafty this character is. So now giving her this low level ability to also take on these characters' powers, and the best part is she's going up against Nick Fury Jr.
Ah.
In the Marvel 616, that's the main person who's after her, trying to figure out, well, what is everything that she's behind. And what's fun is Declan Shelby is just having a blast with this character because he likes to draw. So, and the best thing is he's like, I want to draw all my favorite X-Men. So he has Mystique just doing it.
Transforming for no,
Yeah,
like, not no reason, but
but
he's getting full license to do what all the
yes,
fun stuff that he
and
wants to.
he's having a blast. And what's great is what's fun with this post Krakoan era is we're kind of going, I guess, back to basics where you can read this miniseries and you don't need to worry about all the X Men stuff. You don't
Okay.
need it. Almost ties almost nothing into it. It's just a Mystique story. So if you want a good Mystique story, you want to enjoy some good writing and some fantastic art, 5 issue miniseries, guys. Check it out. And it concludes in February. I highly recommend it. And I'm telling you, this will make you also want to jump on Declan's other projects. Pick up his Thundercats, pick up his Terminator. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, Mystique has always been a weirdly shaped block, right? I don't think you can just slot her in to any scenario. I think that you almost have to build the world around her,
Mm-hmm.
because of how unique of a character that she is. And I think when you have for for me not having the better term, when you have somebody that's a shapeshifter, a big part of their story is identity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they constantly have to identify as other people to get their means. So how do they feel about themselves? How do they look at themselves?
Right.
And when you are as duplicitous as Mystique, where you've taken money from the good guys and the bad guys, where you can seemingly be completely cold and callous and take down an entire room, but then still have love for that character like Destiny, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and be a mother, right? As well. So like, how do you
3 times. Three
three
times.
times. How do you fit all those different aspects into a character? And again, that I think that's always kind of what made Mystique compelling is that you can't. She's unpredictable. You can't set your watch to her, and I think she'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I think she
Yep.
wants to be completely unpredictable. Sometimes she's unpredictable in her viciousness, and sometimes she's unpredictable in her love and her beauty and her
Yeah.
the things that the real core to her. I incredibly deserving of a series. I'm glad they did find a place for her after, like you said, the whole Krakoa of it all, because all it takes. We talked about this before. We were even talking about it a little bit off air. All it takes is for after a fire run for people just not to pay attention, and then characters fall into the cracks, right? Like, oh, that was an amazing run, but they never did nothing with it. It's now that it's done, they were just like, well, it's never gonna get better than that. So we're not gonna try to expound upon that. So the idea that she has her
No.
own uh sort of path, and she was giving her own book, awesome stuff. And I know you swear by Thundercats as well. So if there's any of that same flair in this, then it's a must have, not only book but
Thunder
series. People
tons of
need to
it.
check that stuff
And
out.
yeah, and if you're just a fan of Mystique in general and you do know the hits, Declan has included all that stuff. He's got her. He calls back to her time with the Brotherhood of Mutants, to a Freedom Force, to working with Destiny. All of that
Awesome.
stuff comes up. He's
So
really
I'm almost like
doing
a love letter to the character.
exactly.
Awesome
And now,
stuff.
hopefully, with the way this series end, it leads into more goodness.
Yeah, and like you, some people might look at the Mystique character, and I mean, I think if you've seen her for the first time, especially some of that shape shifting stuff, you'll never forget the first time that you saw her. You know, whether it was in the animated series, whether it was in the films, or anything else. When it comes to first appearances, that's actually what I'm going to be doing for my next
Ooh.
pick. And it's a little bit of a different take than I normally do with these. I am doing a facsimile pick this week, an
Ooh.
older
Okay.
issue reprinted to give some of our younger fans an opportunity to own some classics. And I am picking, which will be released on February 26th, Sandman number 8. This is by Neil Gaiman and Mike Dragenberg. There's been a lot
This
said.
is this is the character with the gas mask, right?
Yes, yes, yes. This is but not the
not
one with
not
that,
that
not the one with the gun.
not that
Not the one with the
Sandman.
gun.
No, no.
Yeah, he
The
does have a
The
gas
Neil
mask, but
game.
not the one with the gun.
No, it's not really a gas mask. That's like a dream mask
Yeah,
that he
yeah, yeah,
has.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
This is The Sound of Her Wings. This is the very first issue that Death is introduced
Mm.
into the DC universe. An iconic character, an amazing story as these two omnipotent beings sit on a park bench and discuss the futility of caring about humanity, why they do the things that they do, how silly and dumb we are, but how adorable we are for just fumbling and stumbling through our existence as these all-powerful beings realize that we are flawed, but that's kind of what makes us beautiful. It is an in-depth look at what death is in general, and what that means to people and how people interpret it. Different cultures interpret it differently, and I feel like Neil's death is an encapsulation of all that, all the feelings we have surrounding it. This was number 2 on Wizard Magazine's 100 Best Single Issues Comics Since You Were Born list. Number
Wow.
2. People have an opportunity to own this now. I love the cape stuff, but I was blown away by Sandman. It's one of those things that you hear about constantly, and you hope you get a chance to get into it because some of it's really really dense. But if you're able to get through that door, that first door, there's a bunch of absolutely rewarding moments, and one of them, hands down, is the introduction
Yeah.
to Death. This conversation with Death and Dream, and just like it made me feel about this big. It made
Yeah.
like the things that they were talking about were
Hmm.
so huge, and I sat there just watching this these two people just talk about the human experience. Gaming's been in some hot water lately, in general. But
I am
I
not aware
think
of
that
this. I'm not aware of this.
yeah, yeah, there's been some stuff said, some allegations against the man. But
Oh.
at one time, at least at this time, he put all of his heart into this story. It was beautifully adapted into the Netflix show as well. This conversation between Death and Dream, I think they did a beautiful job. But as I watched the series first, and then I read back to the comics, and I'm like, there is no series without these comics. These comics live, they breathe. These stories are still collected in omnibus after omnibus after omnibus, leather bound, paperback, hardcover. The Sandman series just continues to age like a fine wine. But if you guys want to pick up an issue that I think is going to change your life, consider Sandman number 8, coming out February 28th. Oh, sorry, it's February 26th. The Sound of Her Wings.
No, I mean Sandman is one of those series, kind of like a Watchmen, a
Let me put Doom Patrol up in there.
Doom Patrol,
Morrison's Swamp Thing.
um, Swamp Thing. I'm trying to think of even more.
Hellblazer.
No, not even. I'm like something that's not superhero stuff.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of comics that people will read that are comics, but they don't consider them comics. So
Right. No, you're right.
Watchmen, I know, even though it has a lot of cape stuff in it, the depth of the story is greater than
Would you say like The Walking
comics.
Dead would fit under that?
Walking Walking Dead. Um,
Why the Last Man has no
Why
superheroes
the
in
Last Man? Exactly.
it?
Stuff like that. Even books like Runaways,
Right.
that's really just a teen drama that happens to have some kids with powers. Something that doesn't require you to embrace the idea of, okay, now the story ends with a guy with a hammer smashing something and saying, oh, I win the battle.
Yeah, reality
it's
has been restored.
restored, right? It's like it's kind of stuff. Sandman was that, and I talk about feeling this big. I stopped reading Sandman. I remember trying to read Sandman when I was in college. I was about 20 years old. I was on that train of just reading great stories. It was like the first
Yeah.
time I read Watchmen. I read why V for Vendetta. That's another
Right,
one you
right, right.
hand people and you just read it. You're like, oh my god, this transcends comics. Stuff like that. And then I started reading Sandman, and after the first two volumes, I was like, I don't think I'm ready for this.
It's a lot. It is a lot.
I never finished it. I've never finished it. It's one of those series I'm always like, okay, eventually I'll get back to it.
My stopping point has been the Midsummer Night stuff with Shakespeare. It's a little dense
Yeah,
going through that stuff there, but it's
you know,
it's a top level book if you're when you're ready for the top level stuff. It's like a pure tequila, right? It's like this is you're right. This is not for everybody. It's 110 proof. It'll make you it'll singe your nose hairs, but when you are ready for it, it's gonna pack that punch.
yeah, and it does. I mean, to the point where look, it's critically acclaimed on Netflix as this series that they took very seriously. Yeah, and seeing them reprint this issue, yeah, this should be an issue that everyone just has in their collection because this is a master stroke of writing. Neil Gaiman, was crazy is, and I'd love to bring up people who write comics who people then don't realize they write books, and
Yeah,
they write books that are critically acclaimed like all the time on the New York Times bestsellers. And you walk into any bookstore, and I guarantee you're gonna have a Gaiman section. And even in schools, there are books that are like, hey, oh, kids should read this Neil Gaiman book.
yeah.
He's
Even
a
wrote Coraline.
There you go.
When I found that, I was like, "What are we doing here?" Okay, all right, gang, gang.
He's an amazing writer. And yeah, I remember when Wizard. I used to collect Wizard. I collected Wizard from like issue 13 until the last issue, and I do remember it being up on that list. And that was before I actually read it, and that was kind of one of those things that sat in the back of my mind. I said, okay, I got to read that series because that was, like I said before, until college, I was all capes. It
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah. That
all
makes
X
sense.
Men. It was all X-Men and Batman and Daredevil and all that stuff. And then I got to college, and you start to get around different people. You start to realize, I want to read something with a little bit more bite to it, a little, and I remember reading Watchmen and then V for Vendetta and being like, okay, now I'm ready for this Sandman thing, and being like,
That's
nah,
like
I
the
ain't ready for
that's
this.
like the prime college experience, right? Exchanging ideas, people from different
Yep.
backgrounds, meeting of the minds. I say grab this up, Sandman number 8.
Mhm.
The only other issue I would want is the diner issue, 24/7, where oh boy, Dreamstone guy goes into the diner, locks everybody in there using the power of the Dreamstone, and makes them do a
Really?
bunch of.
I'm not aware of that issue.
It is considered one of the scariest single issues in comic book history, and was also adapted for the television show. Basically, John, I forget his name. He was even in the Arrowverse. Um, but he has possession of the Dreamstone, and he goes into a 24-hour diner and forces people to do all kinds of things sinfully. So gluttony and lust and violence and rage, where appendages are cut and people sleep with one another and there's blood, and it's horrifying. But it's a single issue as well. And what I like about the issue that I talked about today is that issue, I want to say, is off the heels of what I just spoke about, and they deal with that. The entire world just stops for this issue. It's just two people sitting on a bench. You
No,
know,
I
the
remember,
entire thing just
I
kind of.
remember the panels, and I remember the amazing conversation that the whole, and this whole issue is literally them two just talking on a bench,
Yeah,
and it's amazing, and I hate that there are people out there who don't like issues like this. There are people, oh,
Right.
we
Oh,
hate
I was a
talking head
talking issue.
issues.
It's like, man, I'm glad people got to calm down for long enough to have a conversation.
Exactly, exactly. And you
Yeah.
think about some of the greatest forms of literature have been philosophy books. And what are
Yeah.
philosophy books? But somebody's just sitting there pouring out ideas and crazy uh, machinations of about what reality is. And that's all it is. It's just literally just yammering, all these insane ideas. So to see it brought about on the pages of a comic book with two gods and
Yeah.
no one, neither one of them does anything. They just
No.
have a conversation. It's just a conversation about their experiences because Dream coming out of what he just dealt with, and the
And
whole
he's like,
time
these
Death.
people suck. She's like, yeah,
Right,
they're okay.
they're all right.
All
I've been
right.
dealing with them. I know they locked you up, but I've been dealing with them. No, it's okay.
Yeah, they're
It's
not that
okay.
bad.
So no, great pick. I mean, that's these facsimiles that DC and Marvel have been doing. They are great things that make trying to collect these classic issues easier, and
Yeah.
they're great one for one copies of the original issue. Gorgeous. So yeah, this is definitely I like picking up these facsimile copies, so I'll probably pick it up. It's a great way to it's a great, easy, cheap way to get it in the collection and to really appreciate it and make you feel like, hey, I was actually there.
Yeah.
So
And
no,
also a
awesome.
great stocking stuffer, right? Give them that
What are you trying to? Oh, great. Oh, great. Okay, I see what you did there. I know what I got to
yeah.
get you for Christmas. I got you.
Hey.
I got you.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Awesome stuff.
But for my last pick, talking about things that don't get enough attention, maybe, or kind of getting forgotten about, I'm going with Image Comics' own Kaya, Kaya, a series that is now up to issue number 25. It's being done by Wes Craig, who, if people remember Deadly Class, that brief
Yes, yes, yes.
it was a great kind of ninja school assassin series that was adapted, I believe, by Sci-Fi into a show. I'm not sure how good the show was. I never gave it a
I know
shot.
Wong's in it.
Oh, was he? I didn't know
He's
that.
the main, I think one of the teachers or
I never gave it a shot. I never gave it a
yeah.
shot. I haven't had cable in like 15
Yeah.
years. So, but Kaya is a fantastic series. If you've ever heard of a series called Lone Wolf and Cub,
Yes.
I feel like this is Wes Craig basically homaging and saluting and giving his own twist on Lone Wolf and Cub, where Lone Wolf and Cub was about a samurai saving a kid and basically trying to get him someplace safe.
Hmm.
This is a more fantasy world where a character by the name of Kaya lives in this crazy supernatural fantasy world where her tribe is suddenly just wiped off the map by these monsters. Her and a boy in her tribe survive, and she is able to get this power. I don't want to spoil that too much because even I might. And she now is trying to get this boy to safety while also eliminating this monsters that are not just destroyed her village, but are kind of just you know
Roaming around.
roaming around and destroying her world. This series, I thought this was going to be like a 6 issue, 12 issue series and be done. The fact that we're up to issue 25 and I continue to hear nothing but good things about this because I haven't touched this series in a while. But when I seen it pop up as issue 25 and I read the solicitation where it's actually a jumping on point, this is a good issue for people to jump in. It kind of refreshes you. It's probably going to be a one and done kind of story where it just resets itself, saying, "Hey, look, these are the main players. These are the main characters, and this is where it's going to go from here."
Hmm.
I need to see a series like this to get more attention because stuff like this comes around every now and again. And this series, like I said, I just keep hearing amazing stuff. The artwork is so different. It reminds me a lot of Jendi Tarkovsky.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
butchering his
yeah.
name. Samurai Jack
Savage.
guy.
But he did another one with like the wait, it's like back in the like Willie Mammoth and stuff like that.
Yes, yes. I'm trying to
I
remember
for,
the name of that one. Yeah, that was
I
that was a
thought it was
weird one.
Savage, but I don't think that's what it's
I
called.
don't know, but I know which one you're talking about. But the guy who did Dexter Laboratory and Samurai Jack. It
Primal.
remind that his primal.
Primal.
that, this art reminds me of that. And what's great is it's just two kids, because Kaya is supposed to be like a preteen, almost maybe like a 12, 13, 14, 15 year old, and she's dragging around this kid who's supposed to be like 5 or 6 years old, and they're just wandering the wilderness trying to survive in this crazy fantasy realm that is it's almost like Labyrinth, where it feels like every turn is just danger, 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 danger. What how do we survive this? And a lot of people talk about this series. I mean, Robert Kirkman talks about it with high regard. Kieran Gillen talks about it in high regard. Um, when you got those level of writers talking about how good your series is, you got to give it a shot. And really, what every issue, from what I read, reads so quick. Like everything happens so quick. There's so much action, and there's just all these little details in the page that you can read really fast, but then you go back through it and you go, oh, look at all this gorgeous little details that you just miss because everything seems to happen so fast. I just really wanted to showcase this series and show, because these independent books, they a lot of times they get lost in the shuffle. They get lost in the shuffle of the capes and the Star Wars is
And the world ending, sort of adventures here. I'm looking at it now on Image Comics. I will say that they are supposedly allowing you to read the first issue for free, almost like the classic drug trick of this one this one's on me and you'll want more after this. But the composition of panels, the way that they write thought bubbles, narration bubbles, is not like normal comics. The way that all these things are, the way that the story itself is structured, written about, the way the art is depicted, it looks cool. Like it looks really, really cool. And I love that they're able to give sort of this entry point, both in the issue that you're talking about, but also in this sort of free sample, if you will. The lone wolf and cub story, I think, always works. It's one of those things. It's like David and Goliath. Like, people could say that they're tired of certain tropes, but if done right, I think the heartstrings still get pulled. I'm glad it doesn't seem like they're winding down. I was afraid you're gonna be like, oh yeah, issue 25. That's when you get in because it's all closing up shop. We need unique stories like this. We need unique writers and artists like this to keep pumping out stories like this that encourage other people to tell stories that they didn't think comics were capable of. I think that goes back to what you were talking about before about being like all about cape stuff. That's what we were told comics was until other writers said, no, it could be this too. No, and it could even be this. And it takes people like Wes Craig and even guys like Image, right? Because sometimes you don't want to green light a book unless you know it's going to sell X amount of copies, unless it has on the cover a tried and true IP character that we know we could then make 10 Funko Pops out of. This is not one of those cases. And the publishers that continue to take chances on books like this, may they always get the fortune that they deserve, because this is what actually powers, in my opinion, the business, is new, interesting stories like this that continue because they have the freedom to, not because they're on some sort of hamster wheel, because they have deadlines to meet and they have money to make. I'm not to say that this person is probably afraid of money. I'm pretty sure Wes Craig has made some, but yeah, it takes a little bit of heart and a lot of courage to tell original stories like this. And so the fact that he has continued, and like you said, we're running on issue 25 in February.
As far as I know, I've not heard anything about the series ending anytime soon.
Right.
So I would imagine this. I wouldn't be surprised if this series ran for like at least 50 issues, at least.
Let's do it. Let's go for it, and let's pick those issues up, people. And when they are up to episode issue 50, we'll be here to recommend it. That's the best part of all things major previews. Yeah, those are our picks here for February 2025. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, some inspiration, some desperation, some downright villainy, and some moments of hope, all spread across the medium that is comics. So thankful for all you guys for checking out this series. We keep doing it. It's a labor of love as part of comicbookclick.com. If you want to help us out monetarily, consider being a Patreon at patreon.com/CBC Clubhouse. We do all of our content free of charge. So if you're able to help out monetarily by joining, That is fantastic. For as little as 10 cents a day, $3 a month, you can help us keep our lights on here and keep affording the hardware and the software we need to keep producing content like this. And this isn't the only bit of content you guys will be getting in 2025. We are ramping up the creative engine over here at comicbookclick.com and hoping to have a bunch of new series that really help you guys get into some of these latest and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. Took a long time to get our foot in the door of the comic book world, but now we're kicking it down and showing people that we got something to show for it, which is a lot of energy, a lot of love, a lot of talking, a whole lot of talking about all things to come to comic books and
Power.
comic book media. And
Power.
so get ready for all that stuff. You can do so by following us on social media, facebook.com/comicbookclick, Instagram at comicbookclick, or use that hashtag comicbookclick to talk about the newest, hottest, latest, and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. But you can join us next month for March. Things are going to be ramping up across the board as the summer events start to kick off. Some crazy stuff. So just make sure
Mhm.
that you're staying tuned with all things comic book click. We will never lead you astray. We are your shepherds in this road of all things comics. And last but not least, make sure that you're going out and supporting your local comic book stores. Those are people who turn on the lights and turn off the lights in this party world that we consider of things comics. When comics are great, they're there. When comics are not great, they're there. So make
They're
sure
there.
that you're there. Either way, roughing it through the storms, those people will become your best friends as they learn your taste, as they recommend books, as they end up getting you out and in your comfort zones of all things comics. So befriend somebody at your local comic book store. Make sure that you guys are supporting them. Make sure that you guys are supporting us, and join us for our next episode of Major Previews covering things from March of 2025. But my name is George Serrano, aka The Don.
And I'm Alex Garcia, aka the comic OG, the Cog.
And this has been Major Previews for the month of February of 2025. Go out there, get some books, make some friends, do some recommendations in the comments below. And always remember that you, yes, you, are worthy.